I made a poem, and this is take, I don't remember how many, but I want to recite it to you and then I want to talk about it. So, it's called Pandemonium. It's based off of an I am from poem from a poet that I forgot the name of, but it was a school assignment for speech and debate, kind of like an introduction. And so, I just kind of want to talk about it because I can't get it out of my mind. So, here we go. I am from Pandemonium. I am from those canyons that grew into valleys, carving a deeper hole in the soil each time it rained, and growing so quickly that all it takes is a spark, and burning so bright that it blinds those who observe. I am from control, and struggling not to panic whenever exists a lack thereof, I am from never needing to study because I learned so quickly. I am from I never had to worry about you. You were always so independent. When in reality, I was just too afraid to ask for help when I struggled silently because the anxiety of being a nuisance had grown too strong. And for that, I am from struggle. I am from that same damn pot of spaghetti, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch. I am from be back before the street lights turn on. Riding free down the block for hours, going down that same canyon time and time again. I am from that dead end on Brooklyn Avenue, from those late nights, fake sleeping so I could hear those birds I would have sworn were owls, those morning doves that brought ease, because those were the only moments I wasn't from pandemonium, but rather from peace. And that was my poem. Thank you. Um, so now I kind of want to talk about it. Uh, let's start with, I already told you about kind of where I got the pandemonium from, which is literally just the first line. The first line is I am from Pandemonium, and then we go to the next stanza. And to reiterate the stanza, it is I am from those canyons that grew into valleys, carving a deeper hole in the soil each time it rained, and growing so quickly that all it takes is a spark, and burning so bright it blinds those who observe. Now let's talk about it. I am from those canyons that grew into valleys. What I'm referring to, there's this one canyon that was about a block, or was about 2 blocks away from where I lived growing up, and I would always take my bike and I would always ride up and down, back and forth across that canyon so many times that honestly I know I did it for years and I loved to do it so much. And I really that was the furthest I went from my house by myself, mostly because I just wanted to go up and down that canyon. I didn't need anything else. And I say those canyons that grew into valleys because when I was 10, me and my family packed up and we moved out to Spring Valley, which is a suburb just outside the city. And so I moved from one neighborhood in San Diego to another neighborhood just outside of San Diego. And so I am exemplified as the canyon that grew into a valley. And you should see the view from the house. It's beautiful. And carving a deeper hole in the soil each time it rained, it's just a reference to learning. It's when it rains, it carves a deeper hole. When you learn something, you get another fold in your brain. So, along those lines. And growing so quickly that all it takes is a spark. I'm referring to the springtime greenery and blooms that you always see all the time. I actually have a picture of San Miguel Mountain as my phone background, and I took it just after the springtime storms. I believe it's in 2023, and it was just so green, so beautiful, and the Sweetwater Reservoir was so full at that time too. I got that one as it's the lower part, and San Miguel Mountain in the background, but it was green, it was beautiful, and it all just grew so quickly after the rain, as it does year by year and every year. And then all it takes is a spark is referring to wildfire season and how it's always on fire. Just this year, there was a massive fire not too far from where I lived. I could physically see the fire. I didn't have to evacuate. It was just far enough to where I was fine, but it was still kind of scary, you know. You know, it was the first wildfire I had seen with my own eyes, and so that really stuck with me. And you know, all it takes is a spark, because of always summer drought conditions, and then going into the fall, it's always on fire, basically. And and burning so bright it blinds those who observe. What I'm referring to is kind of how it's how I would imagine, and also how I kind of know that people perceive me from the outside looking in. You know, burning so bright is just a reference to my intelligence, right? I'm commonly seen as a very smart person. You know, I'm seen as an intelligent person, and so I burn so bright, you know, that it blinds those who observe. And I say that it blinds those who observe because they don't see what's behind the fire, and what's behind the fire is always ash and dust, and it's all burnt out. And that's usually what I am. That's honestly what I'm going through right now. And so what I'm really working on is picking myself up. And in the next stanza, right? The next stanza is, I am from control, and struggling not to panic whenever exists a lack thereof. And that's more on how I feel now. It's more obvious now, but it's pretty clear that I felt it for a long time. And it's that I'm a little bit of a control freak, and not in a bad way, but like in a way of I think about the way I do leadership, and I wouldn't take myself as a very good leader. I think of myself as more of a reluctant leader. You know, if we have a leader who's, you know, taking charge and doing everything just fine, I'm gonna sit back, relax, let them take the reins. But if nobody is, then I'm gonna step up. I'm gonna fill that gap, and I'm gonna say, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. And I've had to do that a lot, because, you know, in this day and age, not a lot of people are that willing to step up in situations. But when I can't have control and I don't like the way things are going, I have a tendency to panic. And so I struggle and I fight my inner being to not panic when I don't have control of a situation. When I can't do anything, I start to panic. And then back to kind of like how I learn, the next line is a stanza in itself, but it's honestly really connected to the next one. Honestly, okay, so the stanza with I am from control, and then the next stanza is I am from never needing to study because I learned so quickly. Both of these are build up to the next stanza, which is longer, like the first stanza I had to read to you guys. And so like it's the opening, a stanza. Look, I could show you. So I have the first line, I am from Pandemonium, and then I have this rather large stanza that I spent a moment talking to you guys about, and then the next three lines, which are two stanzas, are transitioning into this one, which is a bit longer. And so I follow the I am control stanza with I am from never needing to study because I learned so quickly. Right? And I think that's such a common trope that I don't really need to expand upon it. You know, there's so many kids who grew up just like me, who picked up on some of these, like elementary math, scientific concepts, honestly, you think about like just reading literature. You know, I always pick up on everything so quickly. I've never really needed to study, especially growing up. And, you know, that's always stuck with me a lot. And moving on, right, to the next longer stanza, I really hope you guys were able to read that, by the way. The next longer stanza being, I never had to worry about you. You were always so independent. When in reality, I was just too afraid to ask for help. When I struggled silently, because the anxiety of being a nuisance had grown too strong. That one's really unique. That's 3 lines. I know it looks like 4, but it's actually 3. So that was a quote that I got from my mom like 2 months ago. 2 months ago, she told me, I never had to worry about you growing up. You're always so independent. You never really asked for much. And that one, and it really hurt me to have to hear that, because because it's so hard to explain. But what I'm getting at is, like, it was really disappointing, because it shows that I never really had the support that I feel like I needed. So I grew up afraid to ask for help, because every time I actually would go and ask for help, I was scolded and lectured for asking for too much, for not being grown enough to handle things by myself. And so it got to a point where I just stopped asking for help. I started to do everything myself. And I'm honestly still at that point where, yeah, I grew up really never asking for anything, and I'm going to continue never asking for anything, because it's gone to a point where I can't get the things that I need even if I ask for them. And so now I'm just simply yearning for full independence instead of being shackled by my family. By my mother, primarily. I love my mom, by the way. I just, sometimes, you get it. I hope. And then after that stanza, right, I say, and for that, it's supposed to be and before that, but I wanted to save syllables, so I put an apostrophe. I said, and for that, I am from struggle. And this one's actually referring to my family background. It's not referring to me personally, because I see the life that I'm living right now. I know I admit it, and I also know my friends, and I know I'm not struggling like them, but I'm from struggle. Not too long before I was born, even in my early development years, I'm talking like 0 through 4, I was going through the struggle, but I was too young to realize it. And I think that's best exemplified in, especially like in elementary school. A lot of times what we would do is we would have one big old pot of spaghetti, and we would eat it for 3 days, every meal. And I love that. I love spaghetti. To this day, I love spaghetti. But we had it so much, and I never realized that it was honestly just a budget meal, so we weren't starving. And so I put a lot of emphasis on that, and by repeating breakfast, lunch, dinner, what I'm saying is that that's how many meals we were able to get out of it. We had it for dinner once, and then it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, and then finally we might just get a new meal. And then we move to the next stanza, where I say, I am from Be Back Before the Streetlights Turn On. That's a classic. So many people know that one. That one's so commonly relatable. And then I say that to refer back to me riding up and down the street. The next line is riding free down the block for hours on end, going down that same canyon time and time again. And that's a reference back to the beginning of the poem, showing that yes, I am still all together in this, trying to stick with the same theme. But yeah, no. That was me touching back on the theme and also showing again, that relatedness. I'm like, this is me relating to other people, Like, this whole thing is me not trying to relate, but just saying things about me that I grew up around, that I hope some people were able to relate to. So, Be Back Before the Streetlights Turn On was a classic for early 2000s, honestly, even into the mid 2010s, before every little kid had a phone, and I didn't get a phone until I was like 13. And then after that, I follow with, since I'm on the topic of riding my bike, I might as well call out my street, the street that I grew up on. I am from that dead end on Brooklyn Avenue. And to anyone who might be from that area, they would know exactly where I'm talking about, because I grew up one house away from where I stayed in this duplex, literally one house away from the dead end sign on the end of the street. So that was always really like iconic to me. And and I use that to bring it closer into my home, right? And the next really big stanza, and I think it's the one I hold closest and dear to my heart, is from those, and I am from that dead end on Brooklyn Avenue, and then I go, from those late nights fake sleeping, which is just another I am from those fake nights fakes. I am from those late nights fake sleeping. Sorry, it's late. And so it's saying I am from, but from those late nights fake sleeping, so I could hear those birds I would have sworn were owls, the morning doves that brought ease. That's referring to like a turtle dove, which is also called a mourning dove, which is called, I don't know. But I say mourning doves as like a double entendre, which is saying like mourning doves because you could always hear them in the morning, but mourning doves because they were literally, they're literally called mourning, like grieving, And and the word mourning, like that one touches base for me because I'm still mourning, because I recently had someone close to me pass. And so, and I'm gonna be honest, growing up, I literally would have sworn that those were local owls that I was hearing. I didn't know they were doves until a few months ago. And I also spent a lot of nights fake sleeping, just so I could stay up all night and see the sunrise, or, just to feel the quietness, because my house was so crowded. I have 4 siblings. I have 2 older, 2 younger, right? The 2 young, the last one came, kind of after we moved out of that house, but it was always like really loud and rowdy in my house, so I really felt like nighttime. I still do, which is why I record these all in like the middle of the night. I feel like nighttime is the only time that I really am at ease. And still in the same stanza, I say because those were the only moments, just to lead up into the next one, which is I wasn't from Pandemonium, but rather from peace. Because I found so much peace and quiet in that night where I feel like I was really able to just be calm and alone. I didn't have to worry about my abusive father. I didn't have to worry about my parents. I didn't have to worry about them, walking out. And for example, my father. He was abusive as fuck, right? So fake sleeping was a coping mechanism for those nights I couldn't sleep. I would just fake sleep, on the couch, and I would just wait for it. I'd wait till I could hear him leave. And as soon as I heard him left, I was up and I was doing whatever I was doing before again. And then, because he would leave always like right around midnight. And so that was just me trying to avoid him. And then I would never really see him in the daytime either. But I spent a lot of nights fake sleeping just to get past him and avoid a lot of lectures and beatings. But yeah. But as soon as he was gone, I really felt calm. And even in moments like this, I still do feel calm. And I just feel like this poem is just such a good insight to my childhood and who I am. So, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.